I'm Sarah Montgomery, 32 years old, a federal auditor specializing in tax fraud, and I was reviewing documents from a large-scale investigation when my phone buzzed. My father's message appeared on the screen like a punch to the stomach. Don't show up to the family reunion. We've decided your presence is no longer desired. Your sister agrees. 32 years of existence reduced to a registered letter delivered to my federal office. My finger hovered over the keyboard for an eternal moment before typing a single word. Okay. There was nothing more to say. Decades of trying to earn a place at the table of a family that never really wanted me had come to an end. Before I tell you what happened when I removed my name from all the family businesses, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had to face a family that only valued you when they needed something. Growing up in Greenville, Alabama, as the daughter of owners of the region's largest funeral home chain should have been a privilege. Montgomery Family Funeral Homes was a respected institution for 3 generations, and our 2-story colonial house with its immaculate white columns was the symbol of success in the Deep South. To outsiders, the Montgomerys represented tradition, respectability, and prosperity. My father, Robert Montgomery, had expanded the business from 3 to 8 funeral homes throughout the state, while my mother, Patricia, orchestrated our social position with the precision of a general. But from early on, I realized there were rules. Not just normal family rules, but unwritten codes about maintaining appearances. Sarah, sit up straight, my mother would whisper during services at the Baptist church. Sarah, your grades are excellent, but your sister was elected student body president, my father would say, always managing to make my perfect report card seem insufficient compared to Emma's social achievements. Emma was my twin sister, 3 minutes older and prepared from birth to inherit Montgomery Family Funeral Homes. She had my father's natural confidence and my mother's social grace. I had neither. I was too studious, too serious, too concerned with justice instead of advantage. That's not how the real world works. Sarah became my father's refrain whenever I questioned why things couldn't be more fair. When I turned 12, I won a state essay contest on business ethics. The local newspaper wanted to interview me. My mother scheduled a beauty salon appointment at exactly the same time. The Montgomery family presents as a unit, she explained while brushing my hair with movements too firm to be affectionate. Your achievement reflects on all of us, and we must look appropriate. The reporter took our photo with Emma right in the center, despite it being my achievement. During college applications, I aimed for the University of Georgia to study forensic accounting. Auburn University would keep you closer to home, my father suggested, though we all knew he meant closer to family business. When UGA accepted me with a partial scholarship, my parents' response was revealing. We'll cover the rest, my father said, but we expect you to bring that education back to Montgomery Family Funeral Homes. I didn't bring it back. I worked 3 campus jobs to pay my own way. During holidays, the dinner table became a battlefield of passive-aggressive comments. Emma closed the deal with City Hall today, my father would announce, followed by, Sarah passed the butter. My academic achievements became footnotes in family conversations. After graduation, Emma seamlessly assumed her role as vice president of Montgomery Family Funeral Homes, while I accepted a position as a federal auditor in Atlanta. My parents attended my graduation but left early for a networking event for Emma. Atlanta is so far, my mother complained when I shared my job offer. There are excellent opportunities in Birmingham. This is the opportunity I worked for, I explained. Your sister is working for what really matters. Family, my father countered. The distance provided perspective. In Atlanta, I built a life defined by my own standards. My apartment wasn't grand like my childhood home, but it was mine. My colleagues respected me for my work, not my surname. For the first time, I could breathe. Then I met Jake Rodriguez at a charity event. He was a tattoo artist, Army veteran who studied theology in his spare time and worked with at-risk youth at the local community center. His laugh was genuine, his ambitions admirable, though modest by Montgomery standards. We connected instantly. After 6 months of dating, I brought Jake to Alabama for Christmas. The disaster began the moment we arrived. A tattoo artist, my mother repeated when Jake excused himself to take a call from one of the youth he worked with. Sarah, you could have your pick of suitable partners. Why choose someone so limited? He's not limited, Mom. He's changing lives, I argued. With what salary? My father interjected. How will he contribute to your future? Not everything is about money, I shot back. My father's laugh was disdainful. Says someone who's never had to worry about it. The irony that I'd been paying my own way since college seemed lost on him. During dinner, my parents steered conversation to Emma and her new boyfriend, Bradley, son of State Senator William Hartwell. They asked about his family connections while asking Jake which bus line he took to work. Later that night, in my childhood bedroom, Jake held me while I cried. "They'll never see me," I whispered. "No matter what I achieve, then it's their loss," he said simply. "Because I see you, Sarah. You're extraordinary." We left the next morning, a day earlier than planned. My mother's parting words: "Think about what you're doing with your life, Sarah. Emma has already been promoted to director at the company and has an appropriate relationship. You're not getting any younger." Back in Atlanta, I threw myself into work. Becoming senior auditor faster than anyone in department history was gratifying, but the achievement felt hollow when I called my parents to share the news. "That's nice, dear," my mother said. "Did you hear Emma and Bradley got engaged? The wedding will be at the Hartwell estate next summer." 2 years ago, my mother called asking for a small favor. Montgomery Family Funeral Homes was expanding and needed help with complex tax issues. "The banks want additional security for some investments. Your reputation is impeccable and, as family, we need you to sign as director of a consulting company." Against my better judgment and Jake's worried advice, I agreed. "Family helps family," my father said. The irony of his selective application of this principle completely lost on him. Now, looking back, I realized it was the only time my father expressed genuine appreciation for any of my achievements, when my clean professional reputation could benefit him. What I didn't know was that I was being registered as majority partner of a shell company. Over the following months, documents arrived at my apartment for signature, always with vague explanations about tax restructuring and fiscal optimization. My forensic accounting background made me question some aspects. But my mother would always call in tears. "Sarah, you're the only one we can trust. Emma doesn't have the technical knowledge. Please, just sign." The breaking point came 3 weeks ago during what should have been a celebratory dinner. Emma and Bradley had announced they were expecting their first child, the first Montgomery grandchild. My parents rented the entire terrace of Birmingham's most exclusive hotel. Jake and I flew in especially for the occasion. "Sarah," my mother kissed both my cheeks when we arrived. "That dress is interesting. Didn't I send you the color scheme for today?" She looked disapprovingly at my navy blue dress. "You didn't send one, actually," I replied, already feeling the familiar weight of disappointment settling in my stomach. "Well, everyone else managed to coordinate." She gestured to the sea of champagne and pale pink clothing around us. "No matter. At least you're here. Emma was worried you might be too busy with that case you mentioned." The Willis case. I had mentioned it briefly during our last call. A billion-dollar tax fraud investigation I was helping lead that could define my career. My mother changed the subject in 30 seconds. During dinner, my parents praised Emma and Bradley effusively. "The next generation of Montgomerys will have an impressive legacy," my father announced, champagne glass raised. "Emma has just been named the youngest executive director of Montgomery Family Funeral Homes. The Hartwell connection has already brought 3 major new clients, and now a grandchild." Jake squeezed my hand under the table. He knew how hard I had worked for my own promotion to senior auditor, a fact my parents acknowledged with all the enthusiasm of someone noticing a change in weather. "Sarah?" Bradley turned to me, his perfect blonde hair gleaming under the chandeliers. "Are you bringing Jake to the family reunion next month?" My mother arranged a feature for Southern Living magazine, 3 generations of Alabama's elite families. I blinked in confusion. Family reunion? I haven't heard anything about this. An awkward moment of silence descended over the table. "Didn't we mention it?" My mother's voice carried the practiced indifference I recognized from childhood, her trademark when covering something uncomfortable. It must have slipped my mind. "It's at the beach house. 4th of July weekend. 3 weeks from now?" "No, you definitely didn't mention it." I looked at my father, who suddenly became very interested in his lobster. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking with Emma and Bradley in the hotel lobby while Jake retrieved our coats. "We thought it best not to have Sarah and her tattoo artist at the reunion," my father was saying. "The Hartwells are bringing the governor and the Merrick son from Atlanta is attending. It needs to be the right environment." "But she's family," Emma said, surprising me. "Shouldn't she be there?" "Your sister chose a different path," my mother responded. "We support her, of course, but this event is about family legacy. Sarah has made clear where her priorities lie. Besides, we already told everyone she's too busy with work to attend." I retreated into the shadows, a familiar hollow feeling expanding in my chest. Jake found me minutes later, staring out the window at Birmingham's skyline. "Ready to go?" he asked gently. "They're ashamed of us," I said quietly. "They're lying to family about why I won't be at the reunion, an event they never even told me about." Jake put his arm around me. "Their shame has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them." Back in Atlanta, I threw myself into the Willis investigation. 80-hour weeks were a welcome distraction from family drama. Then the announcement came. I had solved a crucial part of the case, bringing the department its biggest seizure of the year. My boss, Agent Patricia Reeves, called me into her office. "Sarah, this is exceptional work," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "The director has noticed. We're putting you on the fast track for early consideration for supervisor promotion." For a moment, joy bubbled up inside me. Then, almost reflexively, I reached for my phone to call my parents. I stopped mid-motion. What was the point? The news would be met with polite disinterest, then quickly redirected to Emma's latest achievements or Bradley's pregnancy updates. Instead, I called Jake. His genuine excitement and pride made my chest ache with the contrast to what I'd grown up with. "Let's celebrate tonight," he insisted. "You've earned this, Sarah." That night, over dinner at our favorite restaurant, I found myself reflecting on patterns I'd spent a lifetime accepting. "You know what's strange?" I said to Jake as we shared dessert. "I've spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' approval and never received it once." "Not really. Maybe it's time to stop trying," Jake suggested gently. "You're extraordinary, with or without their validation." The next morning, I discovered through my cousin Amy's Instagram that formal invitations to the Montgomery family reunion had been sent weeks ago. Everyone had received theirs. Everyone except me. I was in the middle of a prep meeting for the Willis case finalization when my father's registered letter arrived. The conference room at the federal building was full of senior agents and associates. The Willis investigation had entered its final phase, and as lead auditor, I was presenting our strategy for arrests scheduled for the following week. My PowerPoint slide showing projected revenue increases was on screen when my phone buzzed against the mahogany table. Normally, I would never check my phone during such an important meeting, but seeing my father's name, an old reflex activated. Montgomery Family Matters had always taken precedence. I glanced discreetly. "Don't try to show up to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now. Emma agrees. This is what's best for family business and image going forward." The words blurred as I felt blood rush to my face. The conference room suddenly felt too hot, too crowded. Patricia was asking me something about third-quarter projections, and I forced myself to answer on autopilot. "Projections show a 17% increase," I heard my voice say, remarkably steady while my inner world collapsed. "If you can turn to page 4 of your packets," I continued the presentation flawlessly. Years of performing under my parents' critical gaze had prepared me well for maintaining composure while in emotional turmoil. No one in that room knew that behind my professional posture, I was processing the formal severing of my family ties via text message. 45 minutes later, the meeting ended successfully. When the room emptied, Patricia stopped beside my chair. "Excellent work, Sarah. The higher-ups are impressed with your thoroughness." "Thank you," I managed to say. "Are you all right? You look a bit pale." "Just fighting a headache," I lied. "I'll take something for it." Once alone, I stared at my father's message again. The clinical distance of it felt like a final insult. Not even worth a phone call after 32 years of being a Montgomery. I walked to the women's restroom, locked myself in a stall, and allowed myself exactly 3 minutes to break down. Silent tears ruined my makeup as memories flooded in. My 5th birthday when my parents were too busy with a business dinner to attend my party. My high school graduation where they left immediately after the ceremony to attend Emma's college alumni event. College graduation where they stayed just long enough for photographs. At the 4th minute, I dried my eyes, reapplied my makeup, and returned to my office. I had a decision to make. My finger hovered over my phone's keyboard for what felt like eternity. I typed and deleted several responses. "After everything I've done for this family, how dare you dismiss me like this? Is this really about family image or about the fact that I won't blindly follow your path?" In the end, I deleted them all and typed a single word. "Okay." It felt incomplete and perfectly appropriate. What else was there to say? 3 decades of trying to earn love and respect had culminated in this moment of rejection. Arguing would only validate their power over my emotions. I sent the text, then immediately called Jake. "They formally cut me off," I said when he answered, my voice remarkably calm. "Dad texted me during the Willis meeting." "He texted you? My God, Sarah." "It's actually clarifying," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "There's no more gray area, no more trying to earn a place at the table. I'm leaving school early, I'll meet you at home." "No, finish your day." "I'm fine, really. But I need to talk to you about something when I get home. The loan. The $2.3 million loan my father had me sign as co-signer 2 years ago. The only thing that still legally tied me to Montgomery Enterprises. During lunch, I researched my options. As co-signer of multiple companies I discovered existed, I had assumed significant risk for businesses I had no control over. If Montgomery Enterprises failed, my own financial future would be compromised. Given my parents' recent actions, continuing this arrangement seemed foolish at best. I called Jennifer Murphy, my personal attorney. They've maintained regular payments, Jennifer confirmed after checking records. But as co-signer, you're equally responsible for the total amounts. Given the family situation you've described, removing yourself would be prudent. What's the process? We'd need to notify creditors that you're withdrawing your guarantees. Your father would need to pay off the loans, refinance without your name, or provide alternative collateral. And if he refuses, he wouldn't have much choice. But it would probably create significant issues for Montgomery Enterprises. I thought about my father's message, about 3 decades of conditional love and subtle rejection, about Jake, waiting at home, who loved me without qualification or expectation. Prepare the documentation, I said finally. I'll sign tomorrow. That night, Jake listened as I explained the situation. Are you sure about this? He asked. It's a big step. They already cut ties, I said. I'm just making it official from my side too. They might see this as retaliation. I see it as self-preservation. Why should you remain financially entangled with people who want nothing to do with you, who are ashamed to have you at family events? Jake nodded slowly. Then I support you completely. That night I slept better than I had in years. The decision, once made, brought unexpected peace. I had spent a lifetime trying to earn my place in a family that had already decided my value. Finally releasing that burden felt like dropping a heavy weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. The next morning, I signed the documentation at Jennifer's office. It would take about 24 hours for the banks to process and notify Montgomery Enterprises. Are you sure about this? Jennifer asked as I picked up the pen. I thought about the message, about a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle rejections, about the freedom waiting on the other side of the signature. I've never been more sure of anything, I said and signed my name. The bank's conference room felt excessively formal for what was essentially a family divorce. Jennifer had arranged the meeting with Bradley Norton, the loan officer who had handled the original Montgomery Enterprise loans. His expression remained carefully neutral as I explained my decision. Mrs. Montgomery, removing yourself as guarantor is certainly your right, he said, straightening his already impeccable tie. However, I must inform you that this will trigger several clauses in the loan agreements. Montgomery Enterprises will need to provide additional collateral within 30 days or face accelerated payment terms. I understand, I replied, my voice steady. Have there been any payment issues so far? Bradley consulted the file. No, payments have been timely, but your personal guarantee was a significant factor in the favorable terms they received. Jennifer intervened. My client's decision is final. Please process the documentation. When Bradley left to make copies, I stared at Atlanta's skyline visible through the window. Montgomery family. Funeral Home's headquarters was just 3 blocks away, a gleaming tower with my family's name emblazoned on top, a building where I'd never worked, never been invited to contribute, despite my legal expertise. You're doing the right thing, Jennifer said quietly, interrupting my thoughts. I've reviewed their finances. They can handle this. Your father will need to use other business assets as collateral, but Montgomery Enterprises are solid. This won't bankrupt them, just inconvenience them. Why did he need me as co-signer in the first place then? I asked. Your credit score gave them a significantly better interest rate. And, she hesitated, and what? Based on the timing, I suspect your father had overextended himself on other projects. Your guarantee allowed him to avoid disclosing certain other liabilities to the bank. The revelation shouldn't have hurt after everything else, but it did. I hadn't been needed as family. I had been used as a financial tool. Bradley returned with documents. I read each page carefully, my legal training ensuring I understood every clause. When I reached the final page, I paused, pen hovering over the signature line. A memory surfaced. My father's office 2 years ago. The heavy fountain pen he'd handed me to sign the original loan documents. Just a formality, Sarah, he had said dismissively. Family helps family. Although, if you had joined the company like we wanted, this wouldn't be necessary. Even his request for help had come with criticism. I signed my name with decisive strokes, then handed the document back to Bradley. The bank will process this immediately, he said. Montgomery Enterprises will be notified by tomorrow morning. Thank you, I replied. Standing to leave, Jennifer gathered her briefcase and we walked out together. In the elevator, I felt a curious lightness. Is it strange that this feels more final than my father's message? I asked Jennifer. Not at all. You've reclaimed your power. That's significant. Back at my office, I threw myself into work. The Willis investigation needed my full attention, and focusing on it provided welcome distraction from wondering how my family would react. I worked late, ordering dinner to my desk and finalizing case details until nearly midnight. Jake texted around 10. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I replied. "Just working late. See you home soon." When I finally left the office, Atlanta's nighttime skyline glowed against the darkness. I paused on the sidewalk, looking up at stars barely visible through the city lights. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly independent, professionally successful, and completely free of family obligation. The feeling was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. At home, Jake had waited up, a glass of wine ready for me. "How are you feeling?" he asked as I kicked off my shoes. "Lighter," I admitted, "and a little scared. They'll find out tomorrow. Whatever happens, we'll handle it together." I fell asleep in his arms, my dreams for the first time unencumbered by family expectations. The notification would reach my father's desk first thing in the morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. in Atlanta. I had scheduled my morning accordingly, ensuring I'd be in client meetings when the inevitable blow-up began. By 7:30, I was already at my desk reviewing documents when my phone rang. Emma's number. I sent it to voicemail. At 7:45, my mother called, then my father. I silenced my phone and went to my first meeting. By noon Atlanta time, I had 17 missed calls. By lunchtime, my phone had become a battlefield of notifications. 28 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 17 voicemails. My father, mother, Emma, and several numbers I didn't recognize had been trying to reach me nonstop since 9:17 Eastern Time, precisely when the bank must have notified about my withdrawal from the loans. I listened to the first voicemail during my lunch break. "Sarah." My father's voice was controlled but tight with fury. "Call me immediately. What you've done is completely unacceptable. This compromises everything we've built." The second voicemail from my mother. "Sarah, what were you thinking? Your father is beside himself. The bank is demanding additional collateral by the end of the month. You need to fix this immediately." The third from Emma. "Sarah, what the hell? Dad is freaking out. Call me back." The fourth from an unknown number. "Mrs. Montgomery, this is Edward Pennington, accountant for Montgomery Enterprises. This is about an urgent financial matter. Please return my call as soon as possible." I set my phone aside and continued eating my salad, a strange calm settling over me. For the first time in my life, a Montgomery family crisis wasn't my crisis. I had removed myself not just from the loans, but from the obligation to manage their emotions and expectations. My assistant, Kelsey, knocked on my office door. "Sarah, there's a call for you on line 2. The man says he's your father's lawyer and it's extremely urgent. Take a message, please. I have the Willis contract review in 15 minutes. Kelsey hesitated. He was very insistent. I'm sure he was, but I'm more concerned with our actual clients right now. The afternoon proceeded with more calls, all sent to voicemail. Around 3 o'clock, my colleague Alicia stopped by my office. "There are 2 people in reception asking for you," she said carefully. "An older couple. They seem agitated." My stomach dropped. "My parents. Want me to say you're in meetings all afternoon? Because you really are." I considered for a moment. "No. Tell security to escort them out. They don't have an appointment and I have nothing to say to them right now." Alicia raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Understood." 20 minutes later, she returned. "Well, that was dramatic. Your father threatened to call the managing partner. Security had to physically block him from the elevators." I felt a wave of embarrassment, then anger. "I'm sorry they put you in that position. Don't apologize. Whatever's happening, you're handling it like a boss." She paused. "If you need anything..." "Thank you, Alicia." At 5 o'clock, my father had indeed called the managing partner, who summoned me to his office. "Sarah," James Caldwell said when I entered, "your father seems to think you're avoiding his calls about an urgent business matter." "I am," I replied honestly. "It's a personal matter that has no bearing on my work here." James studied me for a moment. He mentioned a loan situation. "A personal financial decision I made that affects his business. It's not our firm's concern. He was quite insistent about speaking with you." I'm sure he was. But with all due respect, I'm in the middle of finalizing the Willis investigation. That's where my professional attention belongs right now. James nodded slowly. "The Willis investigation is indeed our priority. Your father mentioned you'll be at the family reunion next weekend. Perhaps you can discuss this there." So they were still maintaining that fiction. I won't be attending any family reunion, James. My father knows this. Something in my tone must have conveyed the finality of the situation, because James simply nodded. I understand. Well, your work here is exemplary, Sarah. That's what matters to this firm. Thank you. When I left his office, I left his eye. My phone buzzed again. Emma. This time, I answered. What the hell, Sarah? She demanded without preamble. Do you have any idea what you've done? I removed my name from loans I should never have been asked to sign in the first place, I replied calmly, after being informed via text that I'm no longer welcome in the family. That's not… Emma began, then stopped. Dad didn't mean… Yes, he did. You know he did. You apparently agreed with him, according to his text. Silence on the line. Then, I never said that. It doesn't matter, Emma. This isn't about the reunion anymore. This is about 34 years of being treated like an afterthought unless my credit score was needed. The bank is demanding $2.8 million in additional collateral by the end of the month, Emma said, her voice strained. Dad is having to liquidate investments at a loss to cover it. That sounds like a business problem for Montgomery Enterprises to solve, I replied. I'm no longer involved, remember? Sarah, this is vindictive. No, Emma. Vindictive would be calling the bank to report the suspicious timing of the original loans relative to Dad's other projects, something Jennifer noticed that might interest their fraud department. I'm simply protecting myself from future liability. Another long silence. Dad wants to meet. I have nothing to say to him. He'll be in Atlanta tomorrow. Palmer House, noon. I'll be working. Sarah, please, just hear him out. I thought about it for a moment. Maybe a face-to-face conversation would provide the closure I needed. Fine. Noon. But I have a 1 o'clock meeting I won't miss. Thank you. Emma sounded genuinely relieved. And Sarah? For the record, I never agreed to cut you off. Never. I hung up, uncertain whether to believe her. By the end of the day, the missed call count had reached 68. Dad's accountant alone had called 12 times. I had 3 emails from the family lawyer and a text from my mother that simply said, "You've broken your father's heart." I shut down my computer and gathered my things. Jake had texted that he'd pick up dinner on the way home. The thought of his steady presence was the only thing keeping me centered through this tumultuous day. As I left the building, my phone rang again. The caller ID showed Montgomery Enterprises. I declined the call and walked into Atlanta's warm evening, leaving the Montgomery family crisis behind, at least until noon tomorrow. The Palmer House lobby gleamed with old-world elegance. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, and frescoed ceilings that had witnessed a century of Atlanta history. I arrived at exactly noon, dressed in my most confident power suit, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, accessorized with the pearl necklace Jake gave me for our anniversary. My father and mother were already seated in the corner of the lobby lounge, my father checking his watch impatiently. They hadn't seen me yet, and I took a moment to observe them. They seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating than the imposing figures of my childhood. My father's hair had more gray than I remembered. My mother's posture just slightly curved. I approached their table. Hello. They looked up, my mother's face immediately arranging itself into the social smile I knew so well, my father's remaining impassive. Sarah, dear. My mother reached for my hand. I allowed the contact briefly before sitting down. I can only stay 45 minutes, I said. I have a client meeting at 1. My father's jaw tightened. This family emergency takes precedence over any meeting. Not for me, I replied evenly. What did you want to discuss? A waiter approached. My father ordered coffee for himself and tea for my mother without consulting her. I ordered sparkling water. You've put us in an impossible position, my father began when the waiter left. The bank is demanding additional collateral we don't have liquid access to right now. We're having to sell assets at significant loss. That's unfortunate, I said, but it's a business problem with business solutions. You have multiple properties that could serve as collateral. Properties that are already leveraged for other projects. His voice rose slightly before he controlled himself, glancing around at nearby tables. Sarah, this is vindictive and childish. Harold? My mother touched his arm. Let's keep calm. She turned to me, her voice softening to the persuasive tone she used for difficult donors at charity functions. Sarah, dear, we understand you were hurt by your father's message. It was poorly worded, sent in a moment of frustration. Of course we don't want to cut ties. Really? I kept my voice level. Because don't try to show up to the family reunion. Your mother and I have decided it's best we cut ties for now. Emma agrees. Seems pretty unequivocal. My mother's eyes widened slightly, darting to my father. That's not exactly... It was direct and to the point, my father interrupted. We've been dancing around this issue for years. Your lifestyle choices and career path are your business, but they don't align with the Montgomery family image we're cultivating. Harold, my mother looked genuinely shocked. It's time for honesty, Patricia, he said firmly. Sarah never fit the mold. Her relationship with that tattoo artist, her insistence on corporate law instead of family business, her constant questioning of how we do things. It's been a distraction we can't afford right now, not with the Hartwell connection and the governor taking interest in our developments. The brutal honesty was actually refreshing after years of veiled comments and passive-aggressive remarks. So I'm bad for the brand, I said. That's been clear for years. Why the loan then? Why involve me financially if I'm such a liability? A flicker of discomfort crossed my father's face. That was a practical business decision. Your credit rating gave us favorable terms, which you're losing now because you decided to cut me off via text message. We could have discussed the family separation more gradually if you hadn't reacted so impulsively, my father shot back. Impulsively? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. I spent 34 years trying to earn your approval. There was nothing impulsive about my decision. Sarah, my mother leaned forward. You know we love you. We've always supported you. Supported? When? When you scheduled over my award ceremony at 12. When you left my college graduation early for Emma's alumni event. When you dismissed Jake because he's just a tattoo artist. When you lied to family about why I wasn't invited to the reunion. My mother recoiled. My father's face hardened. We gave you every advantage, he said coldly. The best schools, connections, opportunities most people would kill for. You gave me things, I corrected. Not love, not acceptance, not respect. The waiter returned with our drinks. We sat in tense silence until he left. What's it going to take? My father finally asked, his voice businesslike. For you to reinstate your guarantee on the loans. It's not happening, I said simply. I've removed myself from financial entanglement with Montgomery Enterprises, and that's final. My father's face reddened with anger. You would compromise this family's legacy out of spite. No, out of self-preservation. And the family legacy will survive. Montgomery Enterprises are fundamentally sound. Jennifer confirmed that. This is an inconvenience, not a disaster. Jennifer? My father's eyebrows rose. You discussed our private business with an outside attorney. My attorney, who discovered something interesting about the timing of those loans, by the way. How they coincided with certain other financial commitments you made that weren't disclosed to the bank. My father's face paled. My mother looked between us in confusion. Harold, what is she talking about? Before he could answer, Emma appeared at our table, looking frazzled. Sorry I'm late. Airport traffic was horrible. Emma? My mother looked genuinely surprised. You didn't mention Emma was joining us, she said to my father. Something clicked. He didn't know, I realized. You didn't tell Mom that Emma was coming because you didn't invite her. She invited herself. I turned to my sister. Why are you here, Emma? Emma looked at our father, whose expression had become stormy. Because this has gone too far. The family fracturing based on lies and manipulation. She sat down heavily beside me. Sarah, Dad never consulted me about cutting you off. I found out when you found out, when Mom mentioned your text response at dinner. Don't be dramatic, Emma, our father said dismissively. We discussed the reunion guest list extensively. We discussed keeping the focus on family legacy and the Hartwell connection, Emma corrected. You never explicitly mentioned disinviting Sarah. It was implicit, our father insisted. No, it wasn't. Emma turned to me. I would never have agreed to that, Sarah. You have to know that. I studied my sister's face, seeing genuine distress there. Then why didn't you call me after you found out? Emma looked down. I should have called. I got caught up in damage control with the investors who were at dinner. By the time I could process what had happened, you'd already removed your name from the loans. Speaking of which, my father cut in, we need to resolve this financial situation immediately. Sarah, reinstate your guarantee and we can discuss family matters afterward. Emma shook her head. That's not why I'm here, Dad. I'm here because it's time for truth. Sarah deserves at least that. Emma, my father's voice carried a warning. Emma ignored him. Sarah, there's something you need to know about those loans. Dad didn't just use your credit score for better terms. 2 years ago, Montgomery Enterprises were overextended. Very overextended. Emma, enough, my father snapped. No, not enough, Emma continued. The Harborview project was in trouble. Cost overruns, permitting issues, environmental complications. The banks were getting nervous. Dad needed your guarantee because without it, we could have faced bankruptcy. My mother gasped. Harold, is this true? My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Business has ups and downs. I handled it like I always do. You handled it by using Sarah, Emma said. The sister you consistently marginalized unless you needed something from her. I sat in stunned silence processing this revelation. So when you asked me to co-sign, the company was actually in financial trouble. Temporary cash flow issues, my father dismissed. Every business faces that. Serious enough that you needed my guarantee to avoid bankruptcy? I pressed. Which I would have told you if you'd ever shown any genuine interest in the family business, my father exploded. But no, you were too busy building your separate life, judging our values, bringing home unsuitable partners. Harold, my mother interrupted, looking genuinely horrified. Emma leaned forward. Dad, stop. This is exactly the problem. You only value Sarah when she's useful to you. The rest of the time, you criticize and exclude her. My father stood abruptly. I don't need to listen to this. Sarah, you have 24 hours to reinstate your guarantee, or I'll have our lawyers examine all legal options for the damage you've caused. Sit down. Dad, Emma said quietly. There's more. Something in her tone made my father hesitate. What do you mean, more? I asked Emma. Emma took a deep breath. After I found out what Dad had done with the loan, I had our new CFO review all the documentation. Sarah, your signature appears on 2 other loan documents. Equipment financing from 2020 and a line of credit from 2021. That's impossible, I said immediately. I never signed anything else. Emma pulled documents from her briefcase, sliding them across the table. These copies say otherwise. I stared at the signature lines. The handwriting looked like mine, but with subtle differences I could immediately recognize as forgeries. I never signed these, I said, looking at my father. You forged my signature? My father couldn't meet my eyes. My mother had gone completely white. Harold, tell me you didn't do this, she whispered. It was necessary for the business, he said stiffly. Temporary measures during COVID uncertainties. Everything was paid on time. It's fraud, I said, my legal mind automatically cataloging the potential consequences. Criminal fraud. That's why, Emma continued. Removing your name from the current loan was actually the right decision. I've already spoken with our lawyers about quietly resolving the other 2 situations without involving authorities. My father glared at Emma. You went behind my back. I did what was right, Emma replied firmly. Something I should have done years ago where Sarah is concerned. I looked at my sister, seeing her in a new light. Why are you doing this, Emma? Taking my side now? Emma was quiet for a moment. Because I've been complicit in how this family treated you. I accepted the favoritism because it benefited me. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. She met my eyes directly. Caroline's pregnancy made me think about what kind of family legacy I really want to build. Not this. Not what Dad created. My father stood again, this time grabbing his coat. This meeting is over. Sarah, reinstate the loan guarantee or face the consequences. Emma, we'll discuss your betrayal back in Boston. My mother stood uncertainly. Harold, maybe we should… Now, Patricia. My mother gave me a conflicted look before following my father. As they walked away, I noticed for the first time how my father's commanding presence had diminished. He looked older, smaller, just a man whose manipulation had finally caught up with him. Emma and I sat in silence for a moment. I'm sorry, she finally said. For everything, for not being the sister you deserved. I studied her. This sister I'd always seen as an extension of my father. Why now? Emma? Really? Becoming a mother changes your perspective, she said quietly. It makes you think about what you're passing forward. I don't want my child growing up in a family built on manipulation and conditional love. She hesitated. And I missed my sister. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with my sister. I missed you too. My phone alarm went off, 15 minutes until my meeting. I gathered my purse, processing everything I'd learned. What are you going to do? Emma asked. About the loan? Nothing. It stays as is. About the forgeries? I'll have Jennifer review everything before deciding. I stood. And about family? I'm not sure yet. Emma nodded. That's fair. More than fair, considering. As I walked away, I felt strangely light. The confrontation hadn't been anything like I'd expected, but somehow everything had been clarified. Montgomery family business, like the Montgomery family itself, had been built on appearances that masked a more complicated reality. For the first time, I was glad to be outside of it. 3 months after that fateful meeting at the Palmer house, I was in my Atlanta apartment, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and pink. My life had transformed in ways I couldn't have anticipated when I first received my father's text. The immediate aftermath had been chaotic. My father had indeed pursued legal options, only to quickly back down when his lawyers realized the implications of the forged documents Emma had uncovered. Montgomery Enterprises managed alternative financing, absorbing the higher interest rate as the cost of doing business without my credit score. My mother had called a week after our confrontation, her voice lacking its usual polish. "Sarah," she had said hesitantly, "I want you to know I had no idea about the loans. About any of it." "I believe you," I had replied. And I did. My mother had always been so focused on social appearances that financial machinations would have been invisible to her. "Your father and I," she had paused, "we're having some time apart. I'm staying with my sister in North Carolina." That had surprised me. In all my childhood, I'd never seen my mother contradict my father, much less leave him, even temporarily. "I'm sorry," I had said, meaning it. "Don't be sorry. It's overdue," she had sighed. "I've been thinking about what you said. About supporting you. You were right. We didn't support. I didn't support." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from her. Emma had called regularly since then. Our conversations were tentative at first. Decades of family dynamics not easily undone. But gradually, we had begun building a relationship independent of our parents. She and Bradley invited me to dinner when they visited Atlanta last month, a surprisingly pleasant evening. "Caroline thinks you're brilliant," she had told me afterward. "She says I'm lucky to have such a formidable sister." Professionally, things had accelerated quickly. The Willis investigation had been a resounding success, and Patricia had formally recommended me for early partnership consideration. My name appeared on the firm's website now as Sarah Montgomery, senior auditor, supervisory track. But the most significant changes had been internal. Weekly sessions with Dr. Levine, a therapist specializing in family trauma, had helped me understand the patterns I'd internalized growing up, how I'd measured my worth by my father's impossible standards, how I'd accepted emotional scraps in place of genuine love. "You can't change your past," Dr. Levine had said during our last session, "but you can change how it affects your future. The question is, how do you want that future to look?" The answer had been forming for months, crystallizing last weekend when Jake took me to Lake Lanier at sunset. There, with waves gently lapping the shore, he had knelt in the sand and opened a small velvet box. "Sarah Montgomery," he had said, his voice steady but his hands slightly trembling. "You're the strongest, most brilliant person I've ever met. Will you marry me?" Looking at him, this gentle, genuine man who loved me exactly as I was, the answer had been easy. Yes, absolutely yes. The ring caught the fading sunlight now as I checked my phone. Emma had texted to confirm she was coming to our engagement dinner next week. My mother had sent flowers when I called with the news, along with a note saying she'd love to attend if I wanted her there. My father remained silent, but that was its own kind of peace. My doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Jake was back from shopping, planning to cook his famous risotto to celebrate my news. The partnership committee had officially scheduled my interview. "Hey," he smiled when I opened the door, grocery bags in his arms. "You look thoughtful." "Just reflecting," I said, taking a bag from him. "It's been quite a year." "Any regrets?" he asked, setting the bags on the counter. I considered the question seriously. The family rupture had been painful, the revelations shocking, but standing in my own home with my chosen partner, building a life on my own terms, there was a freedom in it I'd never known before. "No," I said finally. "No regrets. Just clarity." Later that night, as we sat on the balcony with wine glasses in hand, Jake asked, "Have you thought about inviting your father to the wedding?" I looked out at the city lights, considering. I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to extend the olive branch. Another part wonders if that's just falling back into old patterns. "Whatever you decide, I support you," Jake said simply. "Your family is whoever you want it to be now." The truth of that statement settled over me like a warm blanket. Family wasn't defined by DNA or surnames. It was built through love, respect, and mutual support. Things I'd found with Jake, with friends like Alicia, even in the newly formed relationship with Emma. The realization brought peace. Whatever happened with my parents going forward, I was no longer that daughter desperate to please, measuring her worth by their approval. I was Sarah Montgomery, future supervisor, future wife, author of my own story. As I sit here sharing this journey with you, I want to ask, have you ever had to step away from something familiar to find yourself? Did you discover, as I did, that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest freedom? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that. Standing up for yourself isn't selfishness, it's necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by those who failed to see it, but by the courage you find to honor it.